right over here in case, okay? Okay.
Do you need me to do anything?
What? Do you want to split it up? Do you want to tag team it?
No.
Like one
I can
paragraph,
sit
one
here and
paragraph?
say, yeah,
I mean, do you want me to read it?
yeah, yes.
And then
If I feel anything strongly, I'll just pop in with
yeah,
it.
please do. And do you think that that after this we should read the actual recommendation?
Yes.
Okay.
I do.
All right. I think so too.
This is not ours, right?
I don't know. I think it was just sitting here.
Let's get it out of the way.
Okay, let's get started. Okay. The commission is made up of volunteers with expertise or interest in historic preservation and design. We generally meet on the second Thursday of the month to review cases. Staff to the commission are our urban design and historic preservation staff. They are available to answer questions if you have them, but please do not interrupt proceedings if you do indeed need to speak with one of them. The meeting generally proceeds with the staff calling the case and describing it. Excuse me. I will call for the applicant to come forward afterward and add to the basic description of the request if necessary, or if the applicant wishes to do so. If so, the applicant should keep the presentation to 10 minutes or less. The commissioners will then have the opportunity to ask questions. At this point, I will ask if there is anyone in the audience who wishes to speak for or against the proposal. Audience comments shall be kept to 2 minutes per person. If there is, the applicant will have an opportunity to respond. This rebuttal shall not exceed 5 minutes. In most of the cases, we will make a decision tonight after all information has been presented. If your case is denied, or if you feel that our decision was made in error, you and anyone with standing have the opportunity to appeal it within 30 days of the decision. If you plan to speak about a specific project, you must have signed in. The sheet is at the back of the room. Also, and so that members of the public understand, commissioners are under strict instructions to avoid discussing DDRC meetings and applications with members of the public or with each other outside of these proceedings to avoid ex parte communications. If you wish to speak during the course of these proceedings, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth in these proceedings? If staff would please call the roll.
Mr. Bachnight? Here. Mr. Broom? Here. Mr. Cohn?
Here.
Ms. Moore? Here. Mr. Savory?
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you. Does the agenda still stand?
We've had a few changes to the agenda since publication. Under the regular agenda, we had deferred 20 Governor's Hill. This has been set up for a subcommittee for October 15th from 3 to 5 p.m., just as a note. Also, 700 Gervais, 1100 Wayne Street, the request for a certificate of site plan approval only has been deferred until next month. 1917 Pickens Street, request for a certificate of design approval for exterior changes and appeal to staff decision in the Landmark District has been withdrawn. Those are all of the changes.
Thank you. The DDRC utilizes a consent agenda for those projects which require DDRC review but which meet the guidelines and typically require no discussion. If anyone wishes to discuss an item on the consent agenda, I will ask that you speak up after the consent agenda is read and we can pull the item for discussion onto the regular agenda. If staff would please read the consent agenda.
Our first item is 316 Hayward Street, a request for a certificate of design approval for new construction of an accessory dwelling in the Granby Architectural Conservation District. The next case is 1300 through 1304 Assembly, 1103 through 1113 Lady Street, request for a certificate of site plan approval for new construction in the City Center Design Development District. And last is 3204 Klein Street, a request for design approval for exterior changes and addition and new construction of an accessory structure in the Melrose Heights Oaklawn Architectural Conservation District.
Thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to take an item off the consent agenda for discussion? Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda and the meeting minutes from last month?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion that we approve the September minutes and the consent agenda as it stands.
Is there a second? Second. We have a vote?
Mr. Bachnight?
Yes.
Mr. Broom?
Yes.
Mr. Cohn?
Yes.
Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Savory?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Could we have the first case on the regular agenda then, please?
The first case is 700 Gervais and 1100 Wayne Street. This is a request for certificate of design approval for new construction. It's in the Innovista Design District and also partly in the West Gervais Street Historic Commercial District. This design before the commission is for an 11-story hotel which spans both the Innovista Design District and the West Gervais Historic Commercial District. The proposed hotel is set far off Gervais Street, about 450 feet, back behind the historic depot, which is now Wet Willie's. While the proposed building falls largely within the Innovista Design District, the front facade and some square footage of the side elevations also fall within the West Gervais Historic District. Therefore, both sets of guidelines apply here and are compatible with one another. Each are reliant upon contextual setting, which in this case is simple and largely streamlined, and which happily provides a solid basis for modern architecture in a historic context. The principles of both sets of guidelines largely align. Some examples which staff discussed with the applicants have been successful are the Convention Center and the Vista Lofts buildings. These buildings are successful contemporary and contextual buildings which have clear concepts and simple forms. Please note that because the building is set far back from Gervais Street, the first few stories will essentially be hidden from view and do not address the street. Therefore, guidelines addressing storefronts, pedestrian interaction, etc. from both sets of guidelines will not apply here. However, because of the building height, the visual impact of the building will be great in both the Innovista District as well as the Historic Commercial District. And we've just picked a couple of the relevant comments out of the evaluation to articulate, and then we will let the applicant do a presentation. So under architectural style and theme, this is an opportunity for creative, contextual new construction in the area, and the applicants have expressed an interest in a concept that is innovative. The applicants are proposing brick and glass as the major materials, both of which are permitted. The concrete tower on the east elevation is a reference to the more industrial nature of the districts, as well as to the adjacent Adlu facility. While neither set of guidelines requires a given architectural style, they do require that the building have a clear style and relate to itself as well as to its context. Given the fact that this building is so much bigger than anything adjacent, the composition of features and materials should be used in a way that helps to visually reduce the scale of the building. Section 2.0.4 of the Innovista Guidelines says, architecture should be urban and therefore flexible for various businesses over time. A building should not be so strongly identified with a single business that it cannot reasonably be adapted to another use in the future. Corporate identity should be contained in signage, storefront displays, and/or artwork. The prominent guitar reference on the primary facade is directly associated with a themed hotel, contrary to the design guidelines. The architecture should stand alone as a strong example of a well-designed building in a historic context, apart from its branding as a music-themed hotel. There are plenty of opportunities to reference the theme with signage and on the interior of the building and with artwork that is not integrated into the architecture. Likewise, the historic guidelines also advise against exaggerated features. See to avoid exaggerated features that are out of proportion to the building or that detract from the overall character of the building and district. The proposed guitar head is not compatible with this guideline. It is an exaggerated feature and detracts from the historic character of the district. The staff recommendation says, while there are a number of outstanding concerns with the design, staff would recommend approval conditional upon these items being addressed with some design revisions, then reviewed and approved by staff prior to permitting. The recommendation as follows: to approve the design for 700 Gervais and 1100 Wayne Street based on the pertinent sections as listed in the Innovista District and the West Gervais Commercial Historic District Guidelines, conditional upon the following: that the guitar head be removed from the exterior of the building, the angled supports at the roof be removed or simplified to vertical supports, the horizontal projecting windows on the rear facade be removed, the punched window openings be at least 8 inches deep, the tall vertical window on the north facade be given depth for articulation, the mullion pattern on the punched windows be consistent with the earlier design submitted for the informational presentation, details of the street design and materials to be worked out with staff, signage may be deferred to staff but will require approval by the zoning department as well, and that any other details be deferred to staff.
Thank you. Does the applicant wish to present?
And I believe they have brought a separate PowerPoint, so we might just give a couple minutes for that to be switched over.
All right.
Hello, my name is Stephen Up. I'm here on behalf of Ben Arnold. He's not here for a religious holiday, so I
And
apologize for his absence.
Have you been sworn in, signed in the back?
I did.
Great, thanks.
Brian Hussing is our design architect on this project. And he's going to present.
Commissioners, nice to see you again. It's been
You've
about a
also
month.
sworn in?
Brian Husting, Colin Altamari Architects out of Long Beach. So we received the staff report comments and kind of went through it, so the staff has been very kind to us so far. What we thought we would like to do is show you some of the changes that have been made since we first presented the project, submitted it, and to where it stands today, so that you can see the changes. We've been listening, we've been trying to make the project simpler, and hopefully we're achieving what you're looking for. Let's see if I can get this to work. A lot of this is familiar from last time. The goals that we're trying to do is create a pedestrian experience in a historic area with an entertainment overlay, trying to create an overall pathway between the arena all the way to the Gervais Street. We noticed the night of our last meeting after the Hootie concert that so many of the attendees were already working their path through the back areas to the various bars on Gervais. So the path is already there. We think it can be more pleasant. We would like to draw upon it. And so this is the first step of a multi-phase project to encourage a zone of pedestrian flow and pedestrian plazas through our project to the rest of Gervais. So again, we're trying to create something that everybody's proud of. It becomes a beacon to an entertainment area. That's why we're trying to put a little bit of fun at the top of the tower so it can be seen a little bit further away. As we recall, the property is actually made of two properties, a back railroad area that it will be converted, and the existing entertainment center right now. The site plan remains as it is. Let me go a little bit further. So this slide here is of the side of the building that faces the ADLA mill tower right now, and these are the changes that have been made since we first submitted. We took 2 floors out of the tower. One was a meeting room level on level 2, and we took out another guest room level. And this happened about the same time that we went to the BOZA commission for the height variance, but we didn't pull it out because of height. When they ran all the numbers on affordability, return on investment, and so forth, we just didn't need that much area for this particular component of our project. So 2 floors came out. The connector that actually is shown in this image connecting to the depot building is no longer going to be a connector. It will be a service yard with a historic facade to try and disguise what might be cooling towers and generators there right now. And the size of that we're still wrestling with. We're still trying to understand our engineering applications on what that is. So Tapestry will always read as a separate building. I'm sorry, you have a question? Yes. No. I'm sorry. Okay. So that connector piece won't be there. It'll be replaced by something about 1.5 stories tall. We reduced the amount of pop-out bay windows that were on the side of the building, north side facing Gervais, and the corner windows that were there originally. And we simplified the sign element and the structure that was supporting the sign. We were originally taking our inspiration from the chaotic mess on top of the ADLA, the steel going in different directions, the shadow play, the conduits coming down, and we're trying to capture that same kind of industrial feel of there. I guess maybe perhaps we went too far. So we've simplified things a little bit. We also reduced the angle on the uppermost canopy to something a little bit more straightforward. So this is what we are actually proposing. So 2 stories less, simplified signage, simplified roof structure, and you're seeing the kind of element that's between the depot and the Tapestry Hotel that may be a screen for mechanical equipment on the ground level. And next to it is a small canopy that we've added to a new speakeasy lounge that will be in the basement of the project, which was new since last time as well. Also the addition of the sculptural guitar head at the top. So I think in the review by planning, they felt that this element was actually holding up the roof. It is not. It's a freestanding element. And the idea is to create a look, a vibe that can be seen from far away. Also, on the rooftop lounge there, it's an opportunity for our celebrities to sign their name, and you can get pictures with it if you're at the bar up there. So it's kind of a selfie station, great opportunity to see all of Columbia and downtown. And should this project ever become some music theme that we're trying to tell here. So again, the initial submittal, we had pop-out windows on the north side that we have removed. We brought those inboard and recessed that slightly. So here it is, a little bit smaller, a little bit tighter. This was the original. It looked pretty good at the time, but with your help now it looks a little bit better. And you're seeing the canopy on the lower right-hand side going into the Speakeasy restaurant. So we'll both have an internal elevator connection and an exterior stair taking you down as well. So we have canopies on the lower left-hand side, which will be extensions of our lobby lounge and dining area, so that you'll be able to lounge and dine outside on the promenade to the entertainment area. The initial rendering, the revised rendering that we're showing right now, as you can see the sign is simplified. You can see the shot here of Adla, and the guitar head is almost the same size as the A in Adla. This is where we were before, where we are now. So I think it's this shot here that really shows the drop down in the taking out of the 2 floors. And that's kind of where we are. Where we were, where we are. So as you get on Gervais, it's becoming less and less of an impact area. Some of the existing shots. When I was here last time, I spoke about this being the first component of a multi-phase project, and at that time, I wasn't allowed to show you what the next project might look like. So we've discussed it internally, and I wanted to show you what that second piece is, so that you kind of understand what we're trying to do here. So the second piece, you see Tapestry is located in the blue area over where it says existing entertainment area. The next project we're working on is a hotel in what's called the future expansion area, directly across the Yellow Plaza from Tapestry. And this is a large convention hotel that will connect directly to the convention center. So what we're trying to do here in the family of components is make sure each component has a personality that can stand on its own, so that we're not trying to morph these all together and trying to figure out why you would stay at one place and not another. Each one has a personality. There's elements that tie things together, but we're trying to make a reason why you would want to stay here over another. And in this particular instance for Tapestry, we're trying to do it was a music theme, something a little not normal, something a little bit more bad boy, and we're hoping that has appeal to some people. But this is a shot of the next future hotel that we're trying to do. A lot more straightforward. We're hoping it looks great, tremendous amount of light and window play, and with a direct connection to the convention center with additional ballrooms and meeting rooms. So the entry you can see here about in the middle of the shot, that faces directly the Tapestry Hotel. So we just wanted to show you that we've been thinking about the other various components, and that in conjunction with what you see in Tapestry and here, that there is a personality difference so that people can make a choice. But as other components get developed, they're much more traditional, at least the next one will be. So I don't want to stay on this screen too long, but wanted to share that with you. I'm available for any questions that you might have.
Before we move on to hear from any members of the audience who want to speak, I'd just, if there are any points of clarification that we have for the applicant before we move on.
Can you go back to a couple of the slides you had that showed the before after? I don't think those are in our packet, are they? Okay. You could just go through that one time briefly, one more.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, so in reviewing everything, I mean, the initial submittal of this happens to be the west side, so a lot more pop-outs on here, trying to create something chaotic, has its own personality, stands out. It's different from everything around here, but we felt it stood up well against ADLA, which is also chaotic. We don't ever see that building going away, and because it's an industrial element, we were kind of inspired by that. So something not necessarily ordered, not essentially convention, but we back that up with the last hotel that we show you that is a lot more straightforward. So again, trying to create a series of personalities, and what we're using is the top expression of the building in terms of a cantilevered awning or a cantilevered trellis element of the various buildings to try and create a hat. It gives us the opportunity to bounce light off of these structures at night, so far away you can identify the project, not necessarily without having to see the sign, but kind of identifying there's a fun zone to go to, or if you're at the arena, that helps light the way towards what you should be walking towards.
Anything else?
Thank you.
I have a question. This is in regard to the future expansion presentation on your slide, future expansion. I was looking at the flow, and you said earlier about sidewalks for pedestrians, customers, whatever. Is that your proposal, what I see in red, from Gervais to that yellow area?
Yes, what we envision is two plazas between the Tapestry Hotel on the left and the hotel that I showed you at the end is more of a motor court plaza where all the cars come in, drop off at the hotels. But the other plaza is a pedestrian plaza where they might have farmers markets, mini concerts outside, or dining areas that would spill out to that. And it's purely a pedestrian zone. So the idea is, as the red line to the right-hand side, that connection would continue all the way to the arena. And there's bigger plans that I don't feel comfortable discussing right now, but there's bigger thoughts involved. So again, you're seeing the beginnings of hopefully something wonderful, but we're trying to set ourselves up that you have a population there at the arena. They've either going to an event or coming back. We have restaurants, we have bars, we have entertainment. It's a natural to try and pull them back in this area, so that's what we're trying to do in an environment that's nicer than what it is right now. It's a little industrial feeling back there. People may not have great lighting, but we're trying to create a pathway to, come to our development.
Well, today they're walking on the brick pavement to the back.
Right, yes. The planning comments indicate that we were removing the brick and replacing it with asphalt. That is not our case. The brick entry drive that's right there, we love it. It's been beaten up by the delivery trucks that go to the ADLA flour mill. So what we're trying to do in this development also is get the ADLA delivery trucks to come in another way, and that we use that kind of extension of Gaddison across Gervais as our main entry to our two hotels. So we kind of want to bring that back, and we're going to be hiring a landscape designer to help us with that. So it may be a combination of concrete paving with brick infill, but we want to capture that feeling that's there now because it's really quite nice.
I was going to bring that up about creating a strip to commemorate what's there now.
Right.
Not go away completely.
Right.
We hope to use everything that's available that's still functional.
I can't hear you.
We're hoping to use everything that's still functional to use it somewhere else in the project, whether it be planter boxes, strips in the concrete. Whatever we can use, we want to use again.
Thank you.
Good?
I think for the moment,
Okay.
we're good. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
And so at this point, I'm going to ask for anybody in the audience who wishes to speak for or against the project. I'm going to ask for those who wish to speak for the project first. And I assume the applicant won't have any rebuttals to those who want to speak for, but if you do, as we go through it, for the sake of time, just raise your hand and I'll let you come up and speak. And the other thing I would like to say, again, in the interest of time, is please be mindful when you come to the podium of our purview. We're not about economic development. We are only about the exterior appearance of the building as it pertains to the design guidelines, so I would very much appreciate if folks would keep their comments to that narrow purview. And so with that, is there anyone who wishes to speak for the project? Yes, sir. Have you been sworn in?
Yes.
State your name.
My name is Bart Walrath. I'm a resident of the Vista and president of the Vista Neighborhood Association. The Vista Neighborhood Association, it approves and is excited about the boutique full-service Tapestry Hotel and affiliated food and beverage venues, including the rooftop bar. I applaud the unique music-themed design features in the plan. These features give the hotel character and certainly are in tune with the arts and entertainment designated cultural district that is the Vista. I encourage the DDRC to endorse these design features.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else who wishes to speak for the application? Sir. And you've been sworn in? And state your name, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I am Matt Kennel. I represent the City Center Partnership, the Main Street District, but we are really excited about this hotel in the adjacent Vista District. I think Mr. Arnold and his company have done a wonderful job of addressing the design guidelines for a project that not only fits with the existing Vista neighborhood, but also relates to the total redevelopment of downtown Columbia. In particular, I like the musical elements of the building. I think that, as was stated earlier by Bart, I think that adds to the project. It fully represents the Vista Entertainment District. I know there was some concern by staff, which I respect very much, about making the building stand out for future uses. But in its future uses, whether it be residential or commercial, it's in the Vista Entertainment District, and I think those elements would continue to be integral in the future. So for those reasons, we very much support this project as presented.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else who wishes to speak for the application? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Sure.
This is from Ben Arnold. So I truly believe that this conversation piece, meaning the guitar head alone, will bring more people to downtown to see what it is all about. We can't let guidelines interfere with the vibrancy and economic benefit of this hotel as well as future projects. And then he goes on to say that one of the edicts of the DDRC is to promote the pedestrian interaction, and he feels that does that.
Thank you. Anyone else who wishes to speak for the project?
Good afternoon. I'm Craig Otto. I'm not only a local resident, but also an architect, so I have a great interest in this project. I have a lot of appreciation for what the Vista does. The Vista Guild's website says that, among other things, that they're charged with seeing that Columbia's Vista is an official South Carolina cultural district, a vibrant symbol of our progressive southern city, and dedicated to making the Vista a place of choice for shopping, dining, and entertainment. Also a high-energy urban environment to live and grow businesses. I believe the architecture should reflect that dedication as well. The guitar head is a very prominent part of the hotel, obviously, to reflect the entertainment part of the Vista. it actually reflects the personality of the Vista very well, being arts and entertainment. Staff mentioned that in their report that the guitar head was a guitar sculpture. I believe they're perfectly correct in referring it to that, as the element does appear to me as a piece of sculpture, a form of art, which of course is fully representative of the entertainment and arts district that we have in the Vista. And its high place and prominent location above is very easy to see, and to me is almost a display of art. So I actually think that it's a very exciting potential piece to fit into the Vista. Although the developers may not like that I have this to say, I think that the staff's point of the angled supports for the cantilevered roof, I think that the building might be improved without those, as the roof line would be much more dramatic with the large overhangs without the visible supports. And that would make the guitar stand out even better, and I think it would be more representative of the district. So thank you. I'm in support of the guitar head. Thank you.
Thank you. You sworn in?
I was not. Last meeting.
Do you promise to tell the truth in these proceedings?
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, I asked you if you've been sworn in.
I was not sworn in. No.
Do you promise to tell the truth in these proceedings?
I do.
State
Thank
your
you.
name.
I'm Fred Delk. I'm the Executive Director of the Columbia Development Corporation. We work with economic development projects in the Vista area. Not here to speak about the specifics of the design feature. That's your job and that's staff's job, and I really, truly appreciate your help in doing that. Just wanted to mention, as we've heard, this appears to be the first of a new spurt of growth in the Vista. I've experienced a couple of those, and it feels like we're getting ready to start a new, probably $100 million growth spurt in the area around this hotel, with this being the first project. And it was nice to see the preview of the second project. Unique features in the neighborhood tend to be a positive thing, and love having the idea of having hundreds of additional overnight residents in the area with their credit cards spending money. I think this is going to be a wonderful thing for our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak for the project? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the project? Okay, then at this point, we are ready to deliberate among ourselves. I would love to encourage anybody on the commission to speak up.
I would say that I've been very excited to see the amount of attention that's been paid to the surrounding area. Really what the fabric of the Vista represents, having been a business there for a decade. I'd like to give the architect kudos for really trying to pull at the neighboring buildings, and think this is a really good thing for the Vista. That said, I think the guitar head really is a feature that I would like to see on the building. I think it really is a detail that kind of fits with the theme and what they're trying to achieve. I do not like the angle supports. I do think it would be better if the canopy was out self-supported without them. I know we spoke last time about the windows being recessed deeper. I'm not sure I can tell from here if that was actually done or not, but I think that would be something that would add a lot of value to the exterior of it. And I would agree with the other comments on here, but that's just kind of my take.
Thank you. Anyone else? I more or less agree with Commissioner Cohn's comments, with the exception of the guitar head. And I have to say, and I may be outnumbered by the other members of the commission, I agree with all of staff's comments. My concern about the guitar head, when you all were here for the informational session, I remember saying that I wasn't convinced by the I wasn't convinced by the music metaphor as it pertains to actually architectural features. It seemed too direct. And I did not expect it would go in the opposite direction, that it would actually be a multi-story guitar neck with a giant guitar head on top, which to me seems more in keeping with something that you might expect to see in Myrtle Beach or Las Vegas. I think that the building has tremendous character. I think it's an exciting building. I actually like the pop-out windows. I would like to see, and I certainly hope that it makes it into the motion, for the other windows to have that 8-inch recess. I think that depth is very, very important. I think that the angled supports are actually, I would agree with another comment that was made earlier, taking away from the drama of the potential floating roof. All of those comments I agree with. And I think that the lower building, it's going to be extremely prominent as it is, and I think that a little bit lower is probably more sensitive. I don't believe that some of the other features like the guitar neck and head need to be there to distinguish it from the next hotel that's coming along. By virtue of having seen a sneak preview of the next hotel, they're going to be extremely different from each other. I don't think that they need further differentiation. And my concern is if the guitar head, which is, again, my concern about it is the sheer scale. I mean, it's clearly there as a guitar neck and a guitar head. And if you take the head off, then the neck just becomes, I think that facade becomes the least successful facade of all four of the facades. If we could go back to that. There we are. I really feel as if this is the sort of thing that in architecture school the professors would have said, well, if you're dependent upon something like a guitar head to make the design work, then you probably need to rethink the design, because if you take that thing off and you look at that strip of glass and those mullions that are spaced a couple of feet apart in order to represent guitar strings, you don't have a very strong facade. It depends on that head. And I think that the building itself is spectacular. I think that actually is a very superficial gesture that isn't necessary on the building. So I question if you think of it as just fenestration and you don't think of it as a gigantic guitar neck and you think of those mullions there and you think of this as some future use, it doesn't make any sense as fenestration. So I've said my piece about the guitar neck and the guitar head. I would get back to the other comments that I think the building really does need recess, glazing recessed. It needs those punches for the texture, for the size and scale of the building. And other than what I just mentioned, I think that I'm very excited about the building coming. I think it's going to be a fantastic addition to the Vista. I think that I would back up and say the one thing about the guitar head, which seems to be the big thing that everybody's talking about, it's only showing up at the very last minute. We've seen 3 iterations before we got to the guitar head, so I don't think that the design depends upon the guitar head or the guitar neck. I think it stands very well without that, and I think it actually is a better design without it. I think it's stronger and will stand the test of time better. So that's my point of view. I don't know how the rest of the commission feels about that, but. And the applicant is welcome to respond if you'd like to any of what we're saying up here. Okay.
This is on behalf of Ben again. One of the things that we were trying to do, and may not be showing up properly in this rendering, we wanted to keep that curtain wall kind of similar to the backside. Have it actually pop out. We actually recessed it because of our last kind of informational meeting to have less pop-outs on the front side. Our ideal way to do this would be to have the curtain wall pop out, have the mullions similar to, actually, I found 2 other buildings in downtown Columbia that have a similar mullion structure to where, whether the head's on there or not, it still is going to give us the effect that we want, and we can still put the head on it. Do you mind if I show you those? There's actually the main one you guys probably all know is the building at Main and Lady.
Oh, right. At that building, you're referring to the First Citizens building, that mullion pattern is consistent around the building, so it's part and parcel of the
Correct.
overall
It
design
would
of
be
the
a
building.
similar pattern on the backside as well. The one on the backside is a little bit fatter, but we could do something similar on the front side so it still flows, and then whether the head's there or not, it still works, it's still functional as an architectural feature, but doesn't make it look just like guitar strings. This is the idea that we're going with. The rendering probably didn't show that properly.
Okay. Well, yeah, I would say that to be the litmus test would be, does the design survive without the guitar head? And if the answer is maybe, maybe not, then it may be something to revisit. Any other comments?
Ask a question.
Please.
I really am impressed with the effort that y'all have put into making the building connect with everything else in the Vista and abide by the guidelines. I think the guitar head creates a disconnect from the rest of the buildings in the Vista. And it takes away, in my opinion, from the aesthetics of the beautiful building you've designed.
Any other comments?
Can I go back to the front elevation from last time? Almost like that better, but.
Okay. I think this is all on the record, so what he said was, I don't feel as strongly for as you feel against.
Sorry.
Any more comments? That said, Mr. Cohen, would you please make a motion?
Sure. I would like to make the motion that we approve the applicant's request for a certificate of design approval for the new construction at 700 Gervais and 1100 Wayne Street in the Innovista Design and West Gervais Street Historic District, with the following conditions. That the guitar head be removed from the exterior of the building, the angled supports at the roof be removed or simplified to vertical supports, or removed altogether. The horizontal projecting windows on the rear facade be removed. Punch window openings be at least 8 inches deep. The tall vertical window on the north facade be given depth for articulation. The mullion pattern on the punch windows be consistent with the earlier design submitted for the informational presentation. Designs of the details of the street design and materials to be worked out with staff. Signage may be deferred to staff but will require approval by the zoning department as well, and all other details referred to staff.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have a vote, please?
Mr. Bachnight? Yes. Mr. Broom?
Yes.
Mr. Cohn?
Yes.
Mr. Savory?
Yes.
Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Does the applicant have any questions? Thank you. Next case, please.
The next case is under the historic part of the agenda. It is 808 Sims Avenue. This is a request for a certificate of design approval for exterior changes in the Oakwood Court Architectural Conservation District. Rachel Walling is here to present the case.
No, wait for our PowerPoint to come back up. well, I'll just get started. You have the images in your packet. So this is a request for certificate of design approval to paint brick. This is a circa 1930s two-story brick veneer colonial revival house, clad in variegated brick with a light tan mortar. The windows have brick sills with soldier course headers. Exterior chimneys also have soldier course detailing at their tops.
So it's being reloaded. It's going to take a few minutes.
Okay.
Do you want to keep going? Okay. So generally the house is fairly minimal in terms of detailing, the variegated brick veneer being one highly visible historic detail. The applicant has listed out reasons for requesting, painting the brick, which is included in your packets. Some of those reasons, Some of those reasons include damaged brick, cracks from settling, incompatible repair jobs, as well as a couple areas that will require some brick infill on the side and the rear of the house. You can see that now. So the guidelines state to identify, retain, and preserve masonry features that are important to defining the overall historic character, such as walls, joint and unit size, tooling, bonding patterns, coatings, and colors, and to repair or replace where necessary deteriorated material, duplicating in size, shape, texture as the original as closely as possible. So while staff would recommend cleaning the brick to better fully assess the condition, staff has not observed any brick damage or deterioration beyond common and easily repairable brick maintenance issues. There are the couple areas that would require brick infill, and staff suggests finding a brick to match or using these stairs here, which they have already indicated will likely need to be replaced. These stairs are on the back of the porch, so they're not visible from the street and wouldn't require a staff review to remove. So for staff recommendations, staff finds that the proposed exterior change of painting the brick veneer at 808 Sims is not in keeping with Section 8.4 of the Oakwood Court Architectural Conservation District Design Guidelines and recommends denial.
Thank you. Does the applicant here wish to speak?
Travis Blayton with Preferred Asset Management.
And you've been sworn in?
Yes, I have. We signed it in the back. I would like to hand out as well. We went and used the plat map for the neighborhood to count the houses that have already been painted versus those that are not, and also have a letter from a resident stating that they would be in support of the painting as well due to the appearance of the property. Do I walk around and pass candies to you guys, or?
Has staff seen this material?
No. And so to be quick, there are 51 homes in the Oakwood Court area, 8 of which have siding, 29 of which are unpainted, 9 of which have painted brick, and 5 houses that have siding with brick that is also painted as well. Gives us 38 all brick homes. 24% of those have been painted either a yellow, cream color, or gray, and 43 homes with some sort of brick feature, in which 34% have been painted. And so that's kind of the dynamic of the neighborhood there. And it's going to be impossible for us to do repairs where we install new brick that matches, just due to the age of the property. We can find the style, but the coloration that it's been there a while, weathered, it's not going to match. We also brought our contractor as well, Jeff Bolin, to kind of go over any contractor stuff on that. I don't do that for a living. So he can answer any questions, and if Jeff has anything as well. Okay, I'm done if y'all have any questions for me. If not, I'll let Jeff come up.
Any questions for the applicant?
So are you a resident of this house?
I am not.
Okay.
We purchased the house to renovate it and resell.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So there's not a resident?
You know, I am not a resident.
Okay.
And have you been sworn in?
Yes, sir.
Say your name,
Jeff
please.
Boland, JAB Construction, working with these guys to renovate this home. Not really hiding anything here. You saw the pictures. The house is struggling as it is, looks-wise. This investment group is investing. It's important to know they're investing as much as they bought the property for. And painting is part of that, the original proposal. If we can go to the front elevation. You may have seen it when it first came up, but there's obviously been repairs, throughout time. If you look below the triple window there on the front, you see a gray mortar at a diagonal. If you look above the triple window, you'll see what I can only guess was a canopy at some time that's been repaired, with a gable there. You see the awning on the left side of the porch there, left elevation, has been removed and was approved in the office. There's anchors there. There's chip bricks where that was attached. Those things will have to be repaired. There's chip bricks. More on the rear side, which is not what we're necessarily looking at, but there are cracks, crevices throughout the building. If you had a close-up, you would see 4 different mortar colors from over the years that repairs have been made. We would be the 5th. We can match the color all we want to, but the age is going to be different. You do see where vines, this is the cleaned up version of this house. You do see where vines were growing around the porch, fireplaces you can't see, but with what these guys are investing with the neighborhood, they gave you the numbers of houses that are painted. We're not asking to be the first, we're just asking to be another. I think it would greatly increase the value of the home, would look, fit in with the neighborhood, obviously with some landscaping, shutters, that kind of stuff. I think they deserve the return on their investment, basically is what I'm saying. I don't think it will be a hindrance to the neighborhood. There was some discussion on the mortar joints. The mortar joints are tooled vertically or horizontally. The vertical, I think, is a tooled joint, and the horizontal, where I'm doing that backwards, horizontal is just a straight joint, which is pretty neat. We would preserve that. It would just be covered in paint. We're not redoing, all of the mortar. And I'm thinking we're looking at a white cream color with a different color shutter. Obviously repairing the front porch that has some rot. And I'll also note the windows will remain original. We would paint those to fit the color scheme of the house. In this picture, you can also see the soffits, which are a brown or almost a garnet if you see them in person. We've removed all that. We intend to preserve and redo crown molding that's rotten. After taking that off, we noticed holes where squirrels were getting in, and that was the whole purpose of that metal being placed there. So I don't know if that was ever approved or how that was permitted or if it was permitted, but the soffits will be drastically improved as far as looks go, function. Past that, I think my biggest point is with the money being spent on a project that if you would have seen it before the trees were cleared, you could barely see the house. And now that you can see the house, it lacks a little bit of character. So I guess what I'm saying is I think these guys deserve the ability to regain on their investment while improving the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak for or against this project? All right. Any comments from? Oh, sure. Go ahead. Have you been sworn in? Have you been sworn in? Okay. State your name.
I'm Kimberly Flicker. I am the adjacent neighbor to this property. Very recent neighbor. I'm not actually sure if I'm for or against the painting of this. I'm actually here more on just learning this process myself. I would actually be curious if houses were painted prior to or after the architectural design went into place, because there are quite a few houses that have that. And our house was, I think, part of a group of houses that were flipped as part of this, not through your company, is my understanding. But what I can say is that, as you've already said, there were a lot of trees. They were beautiful. Actually, the adjacent lot next to this on the even further had more trees, and there's another development project going there. But lots of people have commented to me, I'm not the owner of this house, that, wow, you're doing some really great work, and the work that has been done has been very impressive to a lot of people. It's my understanding that our neighborhood has a lot of history. To be honest, I love the brown. I don't know how hard it is. I'm not a contractor, how to fix any of that. But I would say if the part of the reason we had these design rules was to stick to that plan. Our house had an addition put on with all these rules as well. I don't know, I want to say, do your job to help it be beautiful, and thank you for considering their proposal. Sorry,
Thank you.
I don't know that added any information, but thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Sure.
I just want to make clear, I've heard a couple times that trees were removed. We have not removed trees. There was shrub bushes and weeds that were about 5.5 feet tall, and you could not see the house from the road whatsoever. So we pulled that back and down. We will go back with sod and mature bushes up against the house and things like that to keep the look of the neighborhood the same.
Trees are not our purview. Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you for your comments, but and I'm not sure which neighbor you are, but there is an adjacent house to the left of this that was recently remodeled, and it has hardy plank, which it's a beautiful house, looks good, hardy plank, new faux shutters, that kind of stuff. I would just make the comment that I'm pretty sure when this house was built, or these houses were built, hardy plank was not a building material. So there are some changes to the, additions and changes to, as we respect the historical guidelines. In this instance, we're just asking to beautify a project while preserving what we can. Cornices, doors, windows, that kind of stuff. And as he said, obviously there's a landscape plan that would come later. So thank you.
I have a couple of questions, please. Is that all right for me to do?
Mm-hmm.
So the guidelines about not painting were in place when you purchased the house, or have you had the house a long time? I mean,
We have owned the house since February of this year. So they would have been in place.
So what were your plans when you purchased the house if you were not going to be able to paint the house?
We don't currently have a plan for that, so we will have to go back to the drawing board and see what we need to repair, and hopefully we can make it look seamless and match what's there to the best of our ability. If we can't, then it's going to be an eyesore. But we will try to the best of our abilities to match what's there.
The review process is here for this reason.
Stick the microphone, please.
I'm sorry. The review process is here for that reason, and that's why we're here today. So if you tell us no, no is no, but I think...
No, I just didn't know how long you'd owned it.
I'm sorry?
I just didn't know how long
Just
you'd
trying to
owned
get
the
some
house.
Oh, yeah,
clarification.
it's recent. Very
That's
recent.
all. Thank you.
I have a question for you. I'm looking at the front elevation. The double windows at the top and then triple windows down below. Did you repoint that brick to make it look like it's been a settlement in the brick veneer? Or was it like that when you bought it?
I'll let.
I'm sorry, say it one more time.
Who repointed the brick?
No,
You didn't
not
do it.
us.
You haven't done anything yet.
Okay.
That is
Okay.
how the exterior looked.
Right, okay.
Right.
They haven't done any work yet.
So,
Any of that.
do you see any evidence of settlement in that brick veneer?
Any evidence of what, I'm sorry, sir?
Any separation? or-
Yes, there are places that need to be pointed up. Yes, sir.
So that means you got to repoint it.
Yes, sir.
So that means the mortar's not going to match.
Not necessarily.
That was what I was saying. I've counted
You can make a
4
match.
different mortars that have been used over the years. We would be the 5th. And she's got a picture up there of some of the spots that would need to be done.
Thank you.
You're talking about matching brick, and this is a good slide to speak to because obviously there's quite a variety of different bricks in this facade. So, I mean, I know I've done brick repair to buildings that are in much worse shape and much older than this, you know, where it's not variegated. In this case, you've got, in this photograph, it looks like there are 1, 2, 4, or 5 different bricks randomly assorted in the facade. So. It's not one brick that you're trying to match perfectly.
I'm not sure. Do you know where that picture was taken? Because there's been several additions to this project on the rear. And I'm not so certain that the right side porch that was shown on the front elevation was not added at some point. So I hear what you're saying completely, and that may be the case. The majority of the field of view, the field brick, seems to be consistent. As you see on my left, I guess it would be your left if you're looking the same, with the textured brick. That's not something that I can run down to Lowe's or run down to Boral or whatever and pick up.
But it's available.
Have you checked with some, you can get
Yeah,
that.
we've
You
looked
can
for
get
it.
it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I guess my challenge in all this is I commend the effort. I think what you're doing is great, but we're really tasked with upholding these guidelines that were put here for a purpose. And just saying you can paint it because other people did really establishes a poor precedent. And as much as I love painted houses, I also find that this is beautiful too, and that we're preserving something instead of just painting over it.
I have a specific question, if I
Sure.
to staff, because this other lady who asked the question. I think it's a question I wanted to ask. Are there other contributing structures in the neighborhood that, since the guidelines were in place, the ERC has allowed to be painted that you know of?
I'm not aware of any.
Okay.
I'm aware of some requests that have come through that were denied.
Right. Okay.
Unfortunately, I mean, this has come before us a few times where I think we're not here to give a pass because people didn't know the guidelines when they purchased the property. And the neighbors that conformed to the guidelines when they were put in place have us here and trusting in the fact that we'll remember that. I personally know these could be pointed up, you know, with the right amount of effort and attention, and have had to do it plenty of times. So I think just going to Lowe's or hiring a mason that's not very qualified is not going to get the work the way you want, but there are a lot of guys out there that can do this. So,
I've had the same experience on the other side of our architectural construction industry.
yeah.
Any other comments?
Can I say one thing? I'm also one of the owners of the property. Are there any instances where you've approved the brick in addition to adding other things to preserve the historic feel of the neighborhood, where we could add something else in order to make that work?
I don't know the answer. It's a hypothetical question, but I don't think any of us know the answer. Any other comments before we move? I ask for a motion. Okay, would somebody care to make a motion?
We're on number 5.
Yeah.
I'll make the motion at 808 Sims Avenue that the request for a certificate of design approval for exterior changes be denied based on the painting of the brick not being in keeping with Section 8.4 of the Oakwood Court Architectural Conservation District Guidelines.
Thank you. And is there a second? We have a vote, please.
Mr. Bachnight? Mr. Broom?
Yes.
Mr. Cohn?
Yes.
Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Savory?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you. Next case, please.
This is 1229 Maiden Lane. This is a request for certificate of design approval for new construction of a single-family home in a vacant lot within the Melrose Heights Oak Lawn Architectural Conservation District. The proposal also includes a 1.5-story garage at the rear of the property. Generally, the proposal meets the guidelines for height, size, and scale and setback. Staff recommendations focus primarily on overall detailing, making sure the details are consistent within the property and compatible with the neighborhood, and related to the massing of the front elevation and dormers on the house and garage. Relating to the massing and details of the front elevation, while it's broken up into varied forms, the elements of the front elevation appear disconnected from one another. Staff recommendations include changing the shed dormer into a gable dormer to balance the gable on the left with the gable on the right, bringing the roof line on the left side of the house down, allowing the massing of the main roof to become more united with the massing of the front gable roof. Staff also recommends adjusting the windows within the right gable front projection, to better fill the space, which may be as simple as moving the windows closer to one another, which I've shown here. Staff recommends using brick detailing all the way down around the arched entry to emphasize that entry, and using brick detailing or some type of vent detail in the front gable to break up the expanse of brick. And this is just a very rough illustration of that. On the side elevations, staff has found that the massing, rhythm of openings, and most details comply with the guidelines. However, staff recommends adjusting the side dormers to be more consistent with historic dormer detailing by eliminating the wider panels on either side of the windows and bringing the roof line down closer to the top of the windows. Overall details, staff also recommends using 6/6 or 6/1 windows to remain consistent with nearby houses, or 1/1, which would also be acceptable as this is new construction. Also, staff recommends eliminating the use of rafter tails on all portions of the house. There's a few details going on with the brick corbels, the flared eaves. It feels rafter tails is just a little bit too much as far as detail with similar styled houses in the neighborhood. And staff also recommends using a consistent eave depth for all facades of the house. Lastly, on the garage, staff recommends adjusting the detailing and proportions of the garage roof to lessen the appearance that the second floor is larger than the first, and eliminating the shingle panels on either side of the dormer windows. Extra info has been provided by the applicant, which addresses staff recommendations. I've given you a copy of those. This shows some of my recommendations for the garage as well. And I believe the applicant addressed the fact that the roof may have been drawn a little bit taller than it's supposed to be, so that might take care of that. So I'm not going to reread my recommendations because that's basically it. But if you have any questions, let me know.
Hi, can I speak?
Yeah, is
sorry,
everybody,
sorry.
I just want to make sure if you want to absorb this additional information first, since it's new before. Is everybody ready for the applicant? There's a lot, I know there was a lot in this staff comments. I'm ready if everyone else is. Okay, I think we're ready.
Sorry,
And you've been sworn in?
Yes.
State your name, please.
I'm Robin Brackett. I'm the architect for the project, and this is the owner. And he's been sworn in too, if you have any questions for him. And we are excited to be here and appreciate what you do, and looking forward to getting approval.
I think you probably need to get a little closer to the microphone.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Sorry. Whoa.
No, that's good.
I don't do this often. Anyway, we have been working with Rachel and appreciate all the help that she has given us. I think you have in front of you some revisions that have been made to improve the house and to, reflect some of her suggestions for making the house reflect more of the character of the neighborhood. We think it does that. It has a lot of the design elements that exist in the neighborhood. It's basically a 1.5-story house with painted bricks, flared eaves, double-hung windows. It's similar in scale, very similar in scale, to the adjacent house that went through this process and is under construction right now. So I just wanted to, I guess, give an overview and see what questions you have. Again, thinking that what you have in front of you answers the suggestions that came from staff level.
Yeah, I think they'd clarify your responses. Where is this house?
It was a picture that the client found on the internet.
It's not in the neighborhood.
Not in the
Okay.
neighborhood, but there are, there are a lot of swooping and flared eaves throughout Melrose Heights.
Does any commissioners, does anyone have any questions or comments for the applicant?
Well, I wanted to say that this is a big improvement from what I'm looking at on the screen.
Thank you.
I agree.
Sometimes, you're meeting a deadline and trying to get something, and then as you know, you keep working on it, and I appreciate your comments.
I have a question for staff. On the front elevation, the recommendation to go to a gable, that was not because shed dormers are inappropriate to the neighborhood. It was just a compositional comment, correct? Okay. Okay. Yeah, I concur. I think it's definitely improved, and I think it's a good testimony to the dialogue between the preservation staff and the architect, and the architect's client, I presume.
My question to the planning, is this going to be an exhibit to this agenda? Irregular, I mean, how you treat this versus this? the agenda?
We would just add it to the packet, to the end of the
So
packet.
this would be a supplement?
Yeah, it's
or-
kind of like supplemental information.
I think the question is, for instance, if you were to make a motion to,
Yeah, if you wanted to approve as revised or something
right,
like that.
you would just make reference to this email.
I have a similar question to Mr. Savory's with respect to the dormers in regard to the rafter tails. Was that specific to or same
my
kind of
comment
question?
on the rafter tails was related to the fact that there was a lot of details going on already.
Okay.
The example that they provided to, I'm not sure that those are rafter tails. I'm not really sure what that is.
They're more decorative.
Right.
We thought the comment was to either use the rafter tails or not use the rafter tails. Again, that there was a lot of mixing going on, and we were even maybe now that the rafter tails have been placed throughout, on the whole project, we were thinking that it might look better without the rafter tails, and just to have a covered sloped eave.
I think too, on similar houses in the neighborhood, it's more consistent not to have the rafter tails. So if they're open to that.
Yes, we're very open to that.
Okay, so it would look different from what you've submitted. In other words, you chose to do the rafter tails, but you would go back to the corbel.
Yes, and again, just it's a timing thing on our end.
Yeah, okay.
Now that the rafter tails have been drawn yesterday, or, we're like, maybe we might not, may prefer it without the rafter
Okay,
tails.
so you would go back to the corbel design.
The corbels, the brick corbels still with a closed sloped eave.
Right, okay. I think that, I would be more comfortable with that, and especially if you kind of feel that way anyway.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Does anybody care to make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
All right.
While we're on a roll here.
He's on a roll. No
Well,
motions for a
actually,
year, and all of a sudden.
before I do, just because I guess that's the only thing that on this list, and I'm just looking because there's a lot to read through. With regard to the rafter tails, my comment will be to go to a closed sloped eave. Is there anything else on here that we need to discuss?
I think that it doesn't, I think that you probably are going to get a better motion out of this if you don't read these, but you go through these as the, in other words, I would not say anything about that or that.
Okay.
You see what I'm doing?
Yep, I was in the same notes
Okay.
on mine. Okay.
And I would refer to this, I would refer to, per this email and refer to what it is.
Okay. Does anyone have any other comments before? Okay. I'll make the motion that we approve the applicant's request for a certificate of design approval at 1229 Maiden Lane with the following conditions. That, and these are in reference to an email from Ms. Robin Brackett to Ms. Rachel Walling, as well as in accordance with consideration to staff findings, that the side dormers be revised to include a triple window unit, wider side panels will be eliminated, and the roof line will be lowered, that the eave will become a closed slope eave without rafter tails being exposed. The roof overhang will be consistent with an 8-inch minimum. The front roof line on the left will remain as drawn in the applicant's submittal with a natural eave height. The front right gable windows will be revised to a triple unit. The brick detailing at the front entry will not be painted, so the opening will be emphasized. The front gable will have an arched vent added. The garage roof will be drawn as, or built as revised in the drawing. The garage dormer will use a triple window unit, which the front door design will be submitted for review with staff, and the columns will be wood or fiberglass.
Excellent. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? We have a vote, please?
Mr. Bachnight? Yes. Mr. Broom?
Yes.
Mr. Cohn?
Yes.
Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Savory?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next case, please.
This is a request for a certificate of design approval for new construction in the 400 and 500 blocks of Hayward Street opposite the Granby and Olympia Mills. This area of land is rather unusual in Granby as it lacks a precedent for what should be constructed in this location, as historically it was the site of small dependencies for the mills. In most areas of the neighborhood, it is most appropriate to replicate historic styles identically. However, in this case, staff finds that doing so would create an ahistorical sense of development. As a result, the applicant has worked extensively with staff on a design that takes clues from the immediate context, including the former mill office building and the mills themselves. The proposed new construction mirrors the historic office building, but does not replicate the historic design. This identifies the project as new construction, but does not create an ahistorical sense of development. The primary reason that this project is on the regular agenda is that the proposed new construction is a variation from the traditional residential projects in the district. Staff does, however, find that the project meets Section 5 of the guidelines and recommends granting a certificate of design approval with the following conditions. The final door design be submitted to and approved by staff. The applicant work with staff on the overall design for the roofs for the rear porches. The profile of the standing seam metal be approved by staff. Parking areas visible from the public right-of-way be screened, and all other details deferred to staff. And the applicant is here and has brought a sample of the brick as well as the mortar that's proposed for the project.
Thank you. The applicant wish to present? And you've been sworn in?
My name is Andrew Rogerson. I'm the architect for this project. And I have brought samples just for review if staff or the panel's interested. And I'll just echo Megan's comments that I think we've worked together to come up with this plan, and there's no conditions, I think, in that summary that we're opposed to. So we're open to everything, that any comments that you have in addition, and free to answer any questions that you might have.
Great. I'll say that I really like the project, and I commend the simplicity and the understatement. I would like to see a lot more of that come to the DDRC. Everything doesn't have to be a bold stroke, and I think it's very nice.
I'd echo the exact same sentiments.
Any questions for the applicant? This might be quick. Thank you. Anyone here to speak for or against the project? You've been sworn in?
Yes. I'm Joe Weeder. I'm in the Granby Mill Village, also a member of the Mill District Alliance. And this is the second incarnation of what they presented to the staff. And we worked with the staff to try to create more of a flow from the 612 Whaley to the mill office building, and this is just perfect. So the first thing I didn't know, it was kind of squatty, and they just gave it a little more height, and it's really perfect. So we're very happy with PMC and with Garvin and Andrew, and very pleased with the outcome, and we're looking forward to our beautiful brick Hayward Street corridor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Any comments? Mr. Cohen, care to make a motion?
Sure. I'll make the motion that we approve the applicant's request for certificate of design approval at lots 400 and 500 on the block of Hayward Street in the Granby Architectural Conservation District, and in finding that the applicant complies with Section 5 of the district guidelines, and that we're granting it with the following conditions: that the applicant work on the final door design to submit and approved by staff. The applicant work with staff on the overall design for the roofs and the porches, on the porches. The profile for the standing seam metal be approved by staff. The parking areas are visible from the public right-of-way will be screened, and any other details to be deferred to staff.
There's a second.
Second.
Any discussion? We have a vote, please?
Mr. Bachnight? Mr. Broom?
Yes.
Mr. Cohn?
Yes.
Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Savory?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next case, please.
This next request is for a certificate of design approval for new construction, also in the Granby Architectural Conservation District, in the 500 block of Whaley Street. The applicant is proposing to construct 3 new buildings to replace the Type C supervisor housing that once stood in this location. Similar to the Type A salt box houses that characterize the district, the Type C structures are distinguished immediately by several features, including their 2-story porches, single door. Generally, the plans that have been submitted by the applicant are consistent with the historic examples of the structures left in the district. However, the dimensions of the proposed new construction are not consistent with these historic examples. Although visually similar to the salt box houses, the historic examples of the Type C houses are 6 feet wider on their facade and 6 feet shorter in length, essentially resulting in dimensions that are flipped. The applicant is requesting to use the dimensions of the Type A salt box style homes rather than the dimensions of the Type C structures, which will result in a facade that is 6 feet narrower than historic examples. In a district that is characterized by its rigid consistency not only in design but also in size, varying dimensions by 6 feet is significant and a noticeable change. Variations in this district, where they occur, come down to less than 1/4 of an inch. Staff finds that varying the dimensions is not in keeping with the guidelines in Section 5 in size and scale, as the structures with dimensions that match historic examples can be accommodated on these lots. For new construction that has previously been approved in this district, applicants have been required to match the dimensions of historic examples exactly because varying the dimensions of new construction from historic examples creates an ahistorical variation in the streetscape that is not consistent with the guidelines. Staff does find that the proposal is generally in keeping with the guidelines and recommends approval with the following conditions. The dimensions of the house be flipped so that the facade is 36 feet in width and side elevations are 30 feet in length without the rear lean-to. The tops of the windows on the first story align with the top of the transom above the door. Final window and door design be submitted to and approved by staff. The structures match the setback of the adjacent Type C supervisor housing. Wood fencing 6 feet in height and consistent with the guidelines be added to screen any parking that is desired between the structures. A cross-access easement be recorded for the shared driveway, and all other details deferred to staff.
Thank you. Is the applicant here and wish to speak? And Ms. Sworn in?
I have been. I'm Josh Harding. I'm the applicant. Really, all the points I agree with. The only thing that I'd really like to have a little sort of, evaluation on is in terms of the size. I think overall, the style of house is more indicative of, I'd say, a Type A house. And really, I think there's 2 left in the immediate area which are heavily altered. So I think what we've created is a reflection of what is left in the whole Mill District. And we kept consistent with the upper porch and the windows and the 1 door downstairs. So I think everything else is fine. That's
what is it that you would?
In terms of the size, so right now as we have it designed, it's 30 feet wide by 36 feet deep, okay. Which I believe with Megan it should be flipped. So that's really it. That's all.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Understand? Yeah, you'll get a chance in just a second. Okay. So, anyone here who wishes to speak for or against the project? I think that's Did you want to speak? And have you been sworn in? Raise your, right hand. I'll tell the truth in these proceedings? And if you would state your name, please, thanks to the microphone.
Julia Clark Spone. It's spelled CLARK-SPOHN. And we live at 123 Church Street. So first of all, I want to say thank you for giving us this opportunity to be involved with the planning and design of the homes at the 500 block of Whaley. My husband and I live with our baby, our 1-year-old son, my husband's mom, and 2 cats. And we're on the Church Street, the lot that directly abuts the 508 Whaley plot. So we very much appreciate the consideration that has gone into the design of the new houses. However, my primary concerns are, of course, the safety and well-being of my family. And unfortunately, the plans as presented this evening put my family's safety and well-being at risk. Specifically, as both a daughter to an elderly mother-in-law and as a mother with a very curious baby, I see a variety of problems with the proposed parking arrangement. My husband's mother is nearing her 80th year. She suffers from scoliosis and asthma. In fact, it's so severe that she can't walk very far without her oxygen tank. And I fear that the plans that we've seen tonight would negatively impact her in 2 ways. One, by exposing her to exhaust and possibly dust from cars coming and going in such close proximity to our property. And 2, and that would exacerbate her asthma, and 2, by creating a dearth of safe and convenient parking on our street. As the 12 new parking spots around the houses fill up, there will undoubtedly be spillover onto surrounding streets. This spillover will reduce the on-street parking available to residents, possibly forcing us to park further away from our own home. This may seem like a mere inconvenience, but for our mom, it is extremely taxing physically. And from my perspective as a mother, I find the prospect of parking further from our home frightening, since I am essentially forced to walk in the road with my baby, given that there are no sidewalks in our neighborhood. To return to the problem of the parking configuration itself for the new building, in addition to the issues I raised regarding my mother-in-law, the configuration as it stands poses a major safety threat to my child, again due to its close proximity to our property. The thought of my little boy playing in a yard that is mere feet away from cars that are being driven by people who may not know that there's a small child in the vicinity terrifies me. If there were ever an accident involving my baby, we would be devastated. I would like to propose that the developer consider building a fence to serve as a buffer between their property and ours. I think this would solve many of the problems I've outlined. I'd like to add a slight aside. I know this isn't, you guys don't control this, but the volume and the speed of traffic on Church Street has increased exponentially in the past 10 years. Our little street was never intended to accommodate the number of and tremendous size of the vehicles that we see today. We've asked the city multiple times to explore ways to slow traffic down, whether it be through speed humps or other proven methods of traffic calming. With the traffic that will be generated by this new construction, we implore you, both the council and PMC management, to also urge the city to make our street safer for current and future residents. Finally, I ask that you keep my loved ones, whose care is in my hands, in mind as you proceed with construction in our neighborhood.
Thank you. Unfortunately, most of that's outside of our purview. We're just looking at the design. We're not city council, but I appreciate your comments.
Okay. Well, I would like to also
Have you been sworn in?
Yes.
Okay. If you could get to the microphone and state your name, please.
My name is Kevin Bird. One of the things I see when your design parameters is I see the easement they have put in over here, and that easement actually encroaches. That is an ex-city property. It used to be a service driveway for the coal trucks and stuff that used to service the houses. The city has abandoned this alleyway, as it were. They don't maintain it. There's no upkeep at all, and so that has been a de facto driveway, I guess, and what the easement that they are proposing here is actually encroaches over to the property line proper and actually only gives us about 11 feet between our house the property line. So then, in theory, we could still park there, except the problem is once you park your car there, you can no longer get around your car on our property line in case a fence or something had to be installed or something like that. And so that's my main thing about the design, really. I think the design aesthetics of the house, I can live with that. I think the parking in the back is not very aesthetically pleasing at all, but I understand your parameters that y'all want the parking in the back as opposed to the facade of the houses, and also the limitations of the road. They can't really pull into the houses off of Whaley Street. I'm just not sure if we need, one thing, I see, what is it, 12 cars there. One thing to consider is those 12 cars also have 12 friends that also show up. That's 24 more cars on a one-lane street. That's a one-lane street. The fire trucks can't even get down the road. You're also proposing there's more apartments at Hayward Streit, where those be even more parking that will be actually taken away. And it seems like there's no infrastructure thoughts going on how all the vehicles and stuff are going in, and then these houses are going to exacerbate that. That's my main concern.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just as a point of clarity for
Please.
the commission, this proposal does not incorporate the existing alleyway that's behind these lots. You can see on the aerial image here, it is still there. It will be maintained. The applicant is not proposing to touch that alleyway in any shape or form.
Okay.
So I have a question. The driveway that we're seeing behind the 3 homes or buildings, that's on their property and next to this alleyway?
Yes, that's correct. It is on the applicant's property and not in that alleyway.
Okay, thank you.
Does the applicant wish to respond to anything that's been said?
In terms of the fence, I think we're open to that as well. Obviously, with Megan's approval.
Okay.
Certainly, that's, I'm a dad too, so I get it.
While you're here, let me ask a question about because I was under the impression somehow when I read through the material that you were open to flipping the proportions.
That's correct.
You are open to that?
Well, it's designed right now, I guess, opposite of what a Type C house was. The argument that I would make is that there really isn't a true Type C house that's left.
Okay.
And the majority of houses that are in this neighborhood now are Type A, which is as we have designed, with the exception of the one door downstairs and the upstairs porch, which is what a Type C house is. So,
Is the A what's reflected on the site layout?
I'm sorry?
What's reflected on the site layout, an A or a C?
That's an A with the upper porch and the exterior facade of a Type C. So the only thing that's really adjusted is the size.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess I need to understand. So my first question is, you have the ability on the site to flip the dimensions?
It would be tighter.
But it would work?
It would work. It would work.
And I guess the question is to staff. I need a little bit more explanation about Type A versus Type C, why it appears that it should follow one and not the other one. I know you wrote it, but I'm a little confused.
No, that's so the Type A style house is probably what's more familiar in this district. Single-story porch, 2 doors on the facade, but the dimensions of the Type A houses are slightly different. The facade is 6 feet narrower, and they're slightly deeper than the Type C houses. The Type C houses feature a wider facade and shorter depth, but they're essentially the same dimensions. It's just that the dimensions across the facade are wider than the Type A.
And the design of this is emulating the Type A. Therefore, the narrower facade would be preferable. Is that?
The wider facade is what would be preferable.
The wider facade, okay.
Yes. So this is reflecting the Type C design with a single door on the first story, single door on the second story, 2-story porch. Those are features that are more consistent with the Type C. Yeah, and they're historic to this district.
Right. Okay. Is everybody clear on that? I'm okay. Okay. Sure.
Could you pull up the top view picture again, please? One other concern on there are 4 substantial trees upon that property line, and I think they add value to the historic quality. Maybe most of those, there's a few of those trees. I'm in the tree business. My guesstimate is they've been around about as long as that neighborhood is, and it would be a shame also where their driveway is going to cut across the drip line of those trees, and that will cause their decline. They will die. And that would be another concern about the parking ingress of where they have them mapped out. So that was just another concern of mine.
Thanks.
I'm Bob Gild with the Granby Neighborhood Association, and we're supportive of the staff's comments, the flipping of the footprint of the design as an effort at trying to replicate the type C houses that are lost on those lots. You know, before the design guidelines became effective, one of the major setbacks, probably the most significant setback that had occurred in the over 100-year history of the Mill neighborhood was the loss of these 3 supervisor houses. And they were lost to demolition. The city required them to be demolished because the owner had left them in a half-completed condition. So it was a major setback for us, a loss of the historic fabric of the community. I want to commend the staff and also PMC and Josh Harding, his colleagues, for working with the neighborhood and the staff and trying to fill these missing teeth in the neighborhood. And we do think that they ought to honestly replicate the Type C, and that's a minor change that the staff has proposed. And so with that condition, we are very supportive of this efforts, and it's part of the larger effort by PMC to be good neighbors and to fill in the missing pieces in the neighborhood with the project that you just approved on Whaley Street. And so we commend them and the staff and ask you to support this project with the conditions that the staff proposes.
Thank you. Anyone else who wishes to speak? Any questions or comments from commissioners? Would anyone care to make a motion? Mr. Cohn.
Okay.
You're limber.
All right, I'll make the motion that we approve the applicant's request for a certificate of design approval on the vacant lots of the 500 block of Whaley Street, and generally keeping with Section 5 of the Granby Architectural Conservation District guidelines with the following conditions: that the dimensions of the house be flipped so that the facade is 36 feet in width and the side elevations are 30 feet in length without the rear lean-tos. The tops of the windows on the first story align with the top of the transom above the door. Final window and door designs will be submitted to and approved by staff. The structures match the setback of the adjacent Type C supervisor housing. Wood fencing 6 feet in height and consistent with the guidelines to be added to screen any parking that is desired between structures. A cross-access easement will be recorded for the shared driveway, and with the dimension changes, if any accommodations can be made to preserve any grand trees, those be tried and accounted for, and any other details deferred to staff.
There a second?
Second.
I have one point of discussion. If we could add to that motion that the applicant work, as he's indicated, he's willing to work with the neighbor to discuss any additional fencing that might address their concerns. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, I guess then we just need to have a vote then. I think he seconded that, but I think...
I'll take a second again.
Okay. Vote, please.
Mr. Bachnight? Yes. Mr. Broom?
Yes.
Mr. Cohn?
Yes.
Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Savory?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. I think that's the end of our cases. Before I ask for a motion to go into executive session, is there any other business? Then in that case, could I have a motion to go into executive session? I move that we go into executive session.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
I've already got mine. Don't want to get a flu on the ship.
Get some stuff together.
Clean up the timers.
Yeah, I'm going to take the timers.
Where's the rest of our commission? Could I have a motion to come out of executive session, please? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And let the record state that no action was taken in executive session. With that, could I have a motion to adjourn? I move we adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.